Hello, I'm Malcolm. Welcome to edition 2026 of the Enfield Talking newspaper. With me on the reading team for Thursday the 12th of November 2015 are Elizabeth, Patricia, John, with Jason on the controls. And the items we'll be reading are the copyright of our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser and the Enfield Independent. This week's local stories include Mum of crash victim blames speed limit, a 1-year-old cancer sufferer is thriving after gene therapy, majority support for the £42 million cycling scheme, but opponents blast the flawed consultation process. But before we go to the papers, we've got one or two reminders. John, can you say something about Sonata?
Yes. Enfield Talking newspaper is now available on Sonata. Sonata is an internet radio service developed by the British Wireless for the Blind Fund, specifically for use by blind and partially sighted people. Sonata devices are available to buy from the British Wireless for the Blind Fund and require a broadband connection. Listeners who are registered blind or partially sighted, are UK residents and in receipt of means-tested benefits qualify for a Sonata device on free loan. This means if you receive pension credit, attendance allowance or a carer's allowance, you may qualify for a Sonata device on free loan. For more information, please telephone the British Wireless for the Blind Fund on 01622 747 757. That is 01622 747 757. To experience the Sonata in action, please get in touch with your listener's representative, Diane de Jersey, on 020 8805 6579. That's 020 8805 6579.
With another reminder about the same Diane de Jersey.
I'm sure you know by now that you have a listener's representative, Diane de Jersey, who'll be happy to help you with any problems or concerns you have about your talking newspaper. You can call Diane on 020 8805 6578. That's 020 8805 6578.
Okay. Just in case there's any confusion there, the number I think is right for Diane de Jersey is 6578, and not as John had on his bit of paper, not John's fault, 6579. We'll check that out, but 020 8805 6578 we think is the number. And now moving quickly on, we have Elizabeth with the first news item.
The bereaved mother of a teenager who died after being hit by a bus will campaign to lower the speed limit on the capital's busiest roads. David Barcelos, 13, was hit by a bus in 4th Street, Edmonton, in January as he ran for another bus going to his school, Gladesmore Community School. Coroner Andrew Walker gave the verdict death by road traffic collision at an inquest last Wednesday at North London Coroner's Court. Following the inquest, the 13-year-old's mother, Nadia Oliveira, of Joyce Avenue, Upper Edmonton, said her child was full of life. She added, "He enjoyed everything. It's been a very difficult loss, and I'm sure other families would feel the same. No one wants to lose their own child. We will campaign for more to be done to protect children from dangerous roads." The inquest heard from eyewitnesses who spoke of the moments before the teenager was struck by the double-decker. Joanna Dykes, who was working as a doctor at North Middlesex Hospital, saw the teenager collide with the bus. She said, "I could see a bus behind him and I thought they were going to collide. I saw him turn and see the bus. He took 2 big jumps to get out of the way, but he wasn't able to, and he was pulled under the bus." Sandra Thomas, the driver of the bus, told the court how she tried to avoid hitting the schoolboy. "I saw a child coming out of the street and thought, please stop. I pulled to the right and bibbed to avoid hitting him and slammed on the brakes." The schoolboy's father, Emmanuel, questioned the stopping distance of the bus, which was 40 metres. PC Adrian Van Lanker said the bus was travelling at 29 miles an hour, just below the 30 mile an hour speed limit for 4th Street. When Ms Oliveira questioned the speed limit on the road, PC Van Lanker said the road would be unimaginable at lower speeds. The PC said that the 13-year-old would have felt the full force of the bus as it's flat-fronted as opposed to a car. Miss Oliveira added, "We are not here to blame anyone, but you can see if this speed can kill someone, the government should think about doing something to make the place safer. There are lots of accidents in London. Today it's my son, tomorrow it will be another's child."
A miracle baby from the borough is thriving after she became the first person in the world to receive so-called designer gene therapy to overcome her incurable cancer. 1-year-old Layla Richards from Enfield has broken new ground in the fight against cancer after doctors from Great Ormond Street Hospital created designer immune cells programmed to hunt out and kill drug-resistant leukemia in the first treatment of its kind anywhere in the world. Layla was a happy and healthy baby when she was born in June last year, but at just 3 months old she was struck down with what doctors initially thought was a severe tummy bug. But tests showed that the little girl had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a cancer which is particularly hard to treat in babies. Despite chemotherapy and a bone transplant, Layla deteriorated, and her parents, Ashley Richards and Lisa Foley, were told that there was no hope left for their little girl. But they refused to give up and told doctors that they were willing to try anything to help her. Miss Foley, 27, a dental receptionist, said, "We didn't want to accept palliative care, and so we asked the doctors to try anything for our daughter, even if it hadn't been tried before." Doctors have been working on program immune cells to recognize and kill cancerous cells. As part of their cancer research work, a team at Great Ormond Street had added new genes to healthy donor T cells. These cell combinations act very like accurate scissors by cutting genes to make the immune cells invisible to cancer-fighting drugs that would usually kill them, and then reprogram the body's cells to target and fight the invading leukemia cells. Although it had never been tried before, after a few weeks there were signs that the treatment was working, and in the final stage of the process she underwent a bone marrow transplant to replace her entire blood and immune system, which had been wiped out by the treatment. Professor Wasim Kazim, Professor of Cell and Gene Therapy at University College London's Institute of Child Health and consultant immunologist at Great Ormond Street, who pioneered the treatment, said, "We have only used this treatment on one very strong little girl, and we have to be cautious about claiming that this will be a suitable treatment option for all children. But this is a landmark in the use of new gene engineering technology, and the effects for this child have been staggering. If replicated, it could represent a huge step forward in treating leukemia and other cancers." Layla is now recovering at home, although she returns to hospital for regular checkups.
Cycle Enfield has received a 60% backing from the public for its Green Lanes plan, despite fervent opposition. According to Enfield Council figures, the £42 million scheme received full support from 51% of the 1,646 people it consulted and 9% partial support. The statistics claim 40% of people are opposed to the scheme, which will see cycle lanes introduced into Palmer's Green and Winchmore Hill High Streets. Speaking to the Enfield Independent, Councillor Daniel Anderson, Cabinet Member for Environment, said the Council is listening to opposition. He said, "I have said time and time again, we are listening to all views on this before making the final plans. We are pleased there has been an overall support for the scheme. That support has not just come from cyclists, but from people that want to improve our area." But results have been greeted with scepticism from those opposing the scheme. Campaigners part of Save Our Green Lanes group and Enfield Transport Users Group, that's the ETUG, believe the scheme will have an adverse effect on businesses and residents. John Jewson from ETUG said, "We are extremely concerned that the Council has apparently received a majority of votes in favour of the Cycle Enfield proposals for the A105. Even Transport for London themselves have admitted that these changes are likely to seriously affect bus services and lead to greatly increased congestion. He added, "This scheme benefits a very small minority of road users, 5% of people, even if the council's cycling ambitions are achieved, at the cost of worsening bus services for the far higher proportions of older, frail and disabled people whose travel will be worsened by these changes. This is not the approach to adopt in a borough where the numbers both of people reliant on public transport and older people are growing." Yet Councillor Anderson believes this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform Enfield and improve worrying air pollution and obesity figures. He said, "This is not a referendum. This scheme is going ahead, but we need to work with everyone to come up with a fantastic cycling project." In response to concerns that the scheme could be shelved as part of Chancellor George Osborne's austerity cuts, Councillor Anderson refuted claims that the £30 million allocated from Boris Johnson is under threat. He said, "That money has been signed and sealed, so I'm not worried. The money has been delivered by the Mayor of London and not the Chancellor." Criticising the figures, Enfield Southgate MP David Burrows said, "The council's consultation along Palmer's Green and Winchmore Hill has led to less than 1,000 people supporting the plans. It is not a mandate for giving a green light to spending over £30 million of taxpayers' money on this scheme. Rather than rush approval, the council should be carefully considering the responses. I am sending out my referendum this month to provide a greater opportunity for the public to have their say."
Campaigners, as you've been hearing, have reacted with fury to the council's announcement that the majority of people consulted on the Palmer's Green stage of the Cycle Enfield scheme have given their backing to the plans. Helen Osmond, one of the leaders of the campaigners to stop Enfield Council from going ahead with proposals to introduce partially segregated cycle lanes along green lanes from Palmer's Green to Enfield Town, has poured scorn on the council's claim that the silent majority of people have spoken in support of the scheme. She's adamant that the very consultation process itself was flawed and is furious that Cabinet Member for the Environment, Daniel Anderson, has not taken into consideration the postcards and emails she and our Save Our Green Lanes campaigners urged people to send to the council, which were not used as part of the formal consultation process. In a statement, she said, "Mr. Anderson wrote in an email on September the 15th, as I've said on previous occasions and will continue to repeat ad nauseum, all comments, questions, queries and concerns are being fed into the consultation process and will be fully considered. So why aren't they reflected in this decision announced on Monday?" She also believes that the consultation process was designed to be open to abuse from people with a pro-cycling agenda. She told the Advertiser, "To fill out the consultation, you did not need to provide an email address or even your name. Anyone from anywhere could simply find some local postcodes from the internet and fill in the form. Why should the council listen to people who don't live in green lanes?" She says that the next step for the protesters will be taken by a leader of the Tory group on the council, Terry Neville, who will call for an urgent review of the consultation results and for all other communications to be taken into consideration. Last week, Mr. Neville announced that his group has withdrawn support from the plans. In total, 60% of the 1,646 people who responded to the consultation said they supported the plans, while 40% said they were opposed to them. Mr. Anderson, who's championing the scheme, which, he says, will transform the borough into a safer and healthier place to live, said that the protesters have been spreading disinformation about the plans. Pardon me. He added, "The silent majority have spoken and shown that they actually like our plans, despite a vocal campaign which has been spreading disinformation about what the proposals would actually mean for Palmer's Green. The funding we received from the Mayor of London gives us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform our town centres, boost business, revolutionise our transport links, and transform our borough into one which meets the needs of residents, businesses and people travelling through it. We've always said we'd listen to people who got involved in the consultation, and we have, and now residents recognise this scheme is going to improve their quality of life and bring dramatic improvements to this part of the borough. The consultation process for the Enfield Town and Southbury Road aspects of the scheme is still available to complete. And I can give you the email address, which is https://www.consultations.cycleenfield, all one word, .co.uk/traffic and transportation /Enfield town /consultation. There, that's neat and handy, isn't it? Okay. Right, well, last weekend, as you will have realised, included Remembrance Sunday. And here are some items about events across the borough. And we'll start with Elizabeth.
Stories behind some of Southgate's fallen war heroes have gone on exhibition at a church. Christchurch Southgate in the Green will be showcasing the lives of the men who gave their lives in the First World War. The oldest man listed on the memorial died at age 43. Ernest Wiskin of Powis Lane, Southgate, took part in the famous Christmas Day truce, when German and Allied soldiers laid down their weapons and crossed no man's land to exchange gifts. Alan Whale of Blagdon's Lane was a former pupil of Southgate County School and is the youngest man listed on the memorial. He served in Egypt and Salonika in 1916, but died at the Royal Flying Corps Training School when he stalled his plane on takeoff and it crashed, bursting into flames. The exhibition includes photographs of the fallen and copies of letters sent from the front line, as well as extracts from obituaries in the parish magazine of the time. It details a moving account of two former choristers who sang, served and died alongside each other, and stories of the bravery of the church's first scoutmaster, Arthur Gordon Jim Cade. The average age of the men listed on the memorial is just 25. A map of the parish in 1914 shows the location of the homes connected to the men listed on the war memorial. The addresses of 80 of the 146 men are listed so far. Phillip Dawson, church warden of Christchurch Southgate and incidentally the chairman of the Enfield Talking newspaper, said the map reminds us of the scale of the death toll in the First World War and its impact locally, at least one death in every street in the parish. It also shows a class divide. Fewer fatalities in the more affluent Lakes Estate in N13, home to the officer classes, whilst the road with the greatest loss of life was Travers Road, which is now Ivy Road, which was home to 10 men who fell. The Vicar of Christchurch added, "This thought-provoking exhibition provides a glimpse into the suffering of those who gave their lives in service and the community they left behind. It reveals a snapshot of the thoughts and prayers of the people of Southgate as they struggled to come to terms with how best to commemorate death on a scale never seen before. We hope the exhibition will help to focus the minds of visitors not just on the past, but on the plight of those people living in war zones around the world today. The exhibition will be open on Sunday from 7:45 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. On Wednesdays 10 to 1 and 2 to 5, Thursday 12:15 to 1 o'clock, Friday 10 to 1 and then from 2 till 5, and it will close on November the 29th.
A new war memorial has been installed in a school dedicated to former pupils who died in the Second World War. The memorial at Enfield Grammar School in Marketplace, Enfield, commemorates the 11 staff and old boys of the school who lost their lives in service to the country. During the war, a master at the school, Mr. H.W. Mabbott, kept a journal of all old boys and staff who served. Following the end of the war, he placed an advertisement in the local press on several occasions in 1946 to 47, announcing the intention of placing a permanent memorial at the school, as had been the case after the Great War, where 96 old boys died in the service of their country. For reasons unknown to this day, nothing came of it. David Cooper, the Honorary Secretary and later Life Vice President of the Enfield Grammar Old Boys Association, revived the idea, and a lot more information was gathered, but momentum could not be maintained. Shortly before Mr. Cooper died earlier this year, he passed the file on to the current Honorary Secretary, David Mallison. Mr. Mallison said, "To enable this memorial to be placed in the school as a permanent reminder to current pupils and old boys alike is testament to the attachment that many old boys still feel towards the school, and how important the topic of remembrance is still today, 70 years on from the end of the Second World War." Working closely with the school and a graphic designer, plans started to take shape. By July, a final proposal was approved by the committee and an appeal launched for funds. Within weeks, over £1,000 had been pledged by old boys and friends, sufficient to commission the work.
The British and Russian navies will unite in paying tribute to servicemen who served on the convoys which braved perilous journeys to carry vital supplies during World War II. Russian naval attaché Captain Oleg Kornienko will join Lieutenant Colonel Mark van der Burr from the Royal Navy in making speeches at a special service in Enfield on Saturday. They will gather at the Granite Arctic Memorial outside the Civic Centre in Silver Street to mark the 70th anniversary of the last of the Arctic convoys. Prime Minister Winston Churchill described the risky trip taken by the convoys as the worst journey in the world, as they risked attack from German submarines and warships, as well as from the icy cold seas awaiting if they took to the water to escape if they survived bombings. The toll included 85 merchant ships and 16 warships. The Russian government struck medals in 1944 for sailors who survived the convoys, which took food, medical supplies and weapons from Britain, America and Canada to the northern ports in the Soviet Union, including Archangel and Murmansk. The medals which have been presented of late include one to former Enfield resident, the late Frederick Thompson, who was 93 when he received his award last year. Enfield's Cabinet Member for Communities, Yasmin Brett, said, "Those who served on Arctic convoys are often the forgotten heroes, but their contribution was vital to the war effort. More than 4 million tons of supplies were delivered to the Russians. As well as tanks and aircraft, these included vital items such as trucks, telephone wire, railway engines and boots." Saturday's service starts at 2:45 p.m. and will be led by the Vicar of St Andrew's Church in Enfield Town, the Reverend Dr. Steve Griffiths.
Enfield fell silent at 11 a.m. on Sunday to commemorate those who gave their lives in conflict. Processions were held across the borough as people joined scouts, cadets and dignitaries to mark Remembrance Sunday. Edmonton Green, Enfield Town and Southgate all staged events, with Enfield Royal British Legions set to lead an event today, which is November the 11th, for the anniversary of Armistice Day. Enfield Council's leader, Councillor Doug Taylor, said, "Across the borough, the people of Enfield will pay tribute to those who paid the ultimate price in times of war, the brave people who took the risks to preserve the values of a free country. It is at these times that we can be united in giving thanks for their courage, recognising their incalculable contribution to our way of life." Enfield Southgate MP David Burrows, who attended the Southgate procession, added, "It was heartening that so many cadets paraded in Southgate to ensure that both young and old remember lives lost for our freedoms and learn the lessons of history." Edmonton MP Kate Osamore said, "On Sunday I participated in Remembrance Sunday commemorations in Edmonton, and I was honoured to lay the wreath for all those who died as a result of war. It was a very humbling event, and I was glad to see such solidarity and respect shown from everyone present. Remembrance Sunday is an important day when we remember those who lost their lives not only in the First World War, but in all wars worldwide, both past and present, both servicemen and women and civilians. We must learn from the past and work together to build peace across the world today. Enfield North MP Joan Ryan added, "I commend the Enfield branch of the British Legion for the manner in which they organised the commemorations. I also want to pay tribute to the poppy sellers who often have to brave the elements in the weeks leading up to Remembrance Day. What they do is so important. The money they raise helps many servicemen and women and their families who now find themselves in need. It's also right at this time to remember the costs and sacrifices war involves. This is why I was glad to see so many young people at the commemorations, including members of the cadet forces, scouts, Girl Guides, and the Boys Brigades." All right, and now we go back to the news with Elizabeth.
More than 20 teenagers from Enfield have done their bit to raise money for the Children's Hospice. The 15 to 17-year-olds helped bucket collecting at supermarkets and collected raffle prizes from businesses for Haven House. The scheme was part of the National Citizen Service Challenge, with teenagers handing out flyers and posters for a 5K family walk. The chief executive of Haven House Children's Hospice said, "It's great to see so many young people volunteering with us from Enfield and learning about our important work. Volunteering is a great way to meet people, learn new skills and give something back to the local community."
Come to the end of side 1. Please stop your machine, take out the cassette, turn it over, and start side 2.